What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're showing you tips and tricks to be able to make your own General Lee, because I've made my own General Lee. So yeah, now I want to show you some tips and tricks and tell you what car you should use and stuff like that. So first, I would recommend using the Camaro. The reason, I actually clicked something, that. I unequipped my trailer. Anyways, when you have a General Lee, the first thing you want to do is use the Camaro. Why the Camaro, you might ask, and why not the Cuda? Well, the Cuda, as you can see, I get to my Cuda, has a roof scoop on it. The General Lee does not have a roof scoop. If you have seen the General Lee, you know it does not have a roof scoop. It generally doesn't have a roof scoop. So do not use the Cuda. And the only way you can get rid of that roof scoop is putting in a blower or something like that. So I would recommend using the Camaro because it has that line on the hood instead of that roof scoop, which the General Lee does have. As you know, they haven't added a charger yet. So I really want them to. Offroad Outlaws developers, I really want them to, but they haven't. And yeah, they haven't. So, yeah. Also, what you want to do is you want to go to your customization body, and I would recommend using this front bumper because the General Lee had a push bar on it. The General Lee had a push bar on it. Not just any old ordinary grill. It had a push bar, so don't delete the grill. Don't keep the stock Camaro grill. Don't put the spoiler on it. This is just to make it as accurate as possible. I would recommend keeping the stock front bumper on the Camaro. It just looks like the General Lee bumper. Also, I'd recommend changing to these headlights because they look the most like the Charger. Also, these exhausts. The General Lee did not have these exhausts, but it's the closest thing you can get to the exhausts that the General Lee had. If you freeze in a scene in Happy Birthday General Lee, you can see the exhausts do not come out the back end. Instead, they curve down. They curve downwards towards the ground, like in the middle of the car. A bit towards the back of the middle of the car. So do not, use some crazy exhaust or anything. Don't do that. Also, keep the stock hood. You don't want a blower. You don't want this thing. Keep the stock hood. Don't put a spoiler on it, because it generally didn't have a spoiler. Fun fact, it didn't have a spoiler. So, delete the spoiler. Obviously, no horns. Do not put horns on the General Lee. The General Lee did not have horns. Light bar. As you guessed what I was going to say, the General Lee did not have a light bar. And change the grill to this grill. Don't keep the stock Camaro grill. Don't do this made grill. Don't do this grill. Keep this grill. This is the closest grill to the General Lee. Keep the original mirrors. Do not put toe mirrors on it. It just makes it look like an elephant. So don't put toe mirrors on it. Now, rims. Use these rims and keep them matte. Because the General Lee had this type of rim. It's not exactly, but it's the closest you're going to get. It's not exactly, but it's really close to the General Lee. Do not put a bead lock. The General Lee did not have a bead lock. I would recommend putting on these tires, these types of tires, these I guess drag slicks, I guess you could call them. I don't know what they're called. Before these though, I used the second tire option. Oh, no wait, that's the rims. Yeah. Use the last tire. And before that, Before, these tires were in the game, I used these tires. Those were the closest at the time. But now these are the closest to the General Lee. Right here. Now, another thing I would recommend doing is going to the decals and buying a lot of layers. 20 layers. I've used 20 out of 20 layers to make this thing as good as and as accurate as possible. I even have the license plate. And if you've seen in the first episode, near the end, in the first episode of the Dukes of Hazzard near the end, you can see that's SNH 320. That's the General Lee's license plate. Obviously, put the General Lee and make the Confederate flag. I'm not going to do a tutorial on how to do it, but you can find many tutorials on how to make the Confederate flag in Offroad Outlaws. Yeah. So that's what you'll want to do. Also put the 01 on the side. Generally had the 01 on it. It's pretty famous for that. Also, do your own custom orange, and I would recommend putting it on glossy, because the General Lee had glossy paint. It had this shine to it. Matte, it didn't have matte paint. It didn't. It especially didn't have this type of paint. It didn't have this type of paint. It had glossy paint. Do not add any flags, but do have a CB antenna. The General Lee did have a CB antenna. So don't do any flags. Just have a very long antenna. Also, do not use wraps. I used wraps to make my Confederate flag one time. You can see what it looked like on my home screen. Yeah, I have a picture of my old General Lee on my home screen. Actually, you can see here. It don't look that good. As you can see, it's all stretched out. So that's why I specifically used the decal method. Do not use wraps. It'll just make it look pretty bad. Unless you're really good with wraps and you could do some extra details. If you can do if you can do extra details, then do that. Do that. Also, keep the General Lee pretty low. You don't want too low, because the General Lee was pretty high up the ground, but don't keep it as the stock height. Lower it a bit. So yeah, just lower it a tad bit. So yeah, I had this General Lee before decals came out. I've been playing for a long time, I know. I had this General Lee before decals were even came out. So yeah, that's why I used wraps, and it didn't look that good, but it looked better than some flags. But I would recommend that's just on the paint job and stuff like that. I'm gonna exit to make sure, yeah. Okay. And obviously, upgrade it all the way. Do not put diesel in it. It did not have a diesel. Fun fact, the General Lee did have manual transmission sounds, but it itself did not have the transmission and manual transmission. Fun fact. But yeah, the General Lee, fun fact, it did not have a manual. All the General Lees have automatics. They used a manual sound effect on the General Lee sounds, but the General Lee itself did not have a manual transmission. And I'm not good with a manual transmission in this game, so that's why I just kept it as an automatic. Obviously, no diesel. E-brake. I would recommend an e-brake so you can kind of skirt it around curves, drift it around curves. General Lee didn't have a turbo. It did not have a blower, but I wanted more horsepower. So Yeah, you can choose between blower. And also, do not make it cut out hood. That generally obviously did not have that. So, yeah. Also, when I first started with my Generally, it did have a winch on it. The reason why was because if you look at the Generally grill, or the Dodge Charger grill in general, you can see it has this thing in the middle of it, this chrome little triangle in the middle of it. And I figured, what else could I do? Because this grill obviously doesn't have it. I decided to use a winch. But it just didn't look good on the Generally, and I figured that out soon. So yeah, don't want that. You don't want. I know you might want to make it, and if you can make that little thing and it looks pretty good, make it. Just make it. So yeah, this ain't really a tutorial, but I mean, it's just telling you like what to do, like gave you an idea of what to do. But yeah, since you can't really get rid of the exhausts, yeah, don't get side pipes. Generally did not have side pipes. Don't get these. These are just insane. Obviously, the Generally did not have those. Get these subtle ones. Also, no fender flares. Do not get big fenders. Just keep the stock fenders on the Camaro. But yeah, that's basically gonna be it for this video. Wow, 11 minutes. Wow.